Hello, everybody. I'm going to be going live with Dr. Olivia Lesslar, and we're going to be talking about health, biohacking, longevity, probably all sorts of topics. Hopefully, we get into some crazy tangents. Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Are you on the East Coast?
I am. I actually fly out to Copenhagen in T minus 4 hours.
Nice. Denmark, right?
Uh-huh.
I was there.
Yeah.
I went there a few years ago. I
It's
think I
it's
might have been
beautiful.
there last summer, but I can't remember.
And
A
so
completely organic country, right?
yeah,
I believe.
yeah, well it's really quite clean or so they say. Who knows these
Yeah.
days, right? You can never trust what they say. So I am going there to give a talk actually on psycho-neuro-immunology, which is my expertise, at a place called 130 Labs. And I'm there for 2 days, and then I head back to London for a bit.
And are you in Australia? Like, where are
I
you?
I am, yeah. So I'm actually a nomad. I've been a nomad now for 2.5 years. Originally Australian. I mean, I am still Australian. I kind of left because it's a very toxic environment to work in if you are a left of field medical practitioner.
What
So
does
if
that mean?
you
Yeah.
so integrative, functional, talking about crazy stuff like diet and lifestyle and sleep. So
Right. So crazy.
so crazy, so crazy. You know, if you ask questions, that makes you someone to keep an eye on. And so I've been slowly. I feel like it's just not a safe place to work anymore. I know plenty of doctor friends who, lost their licenses, or had been given warnings by the government during the pandemic. And yeah, so I've left. I give mostly talks, and I'm scientific or medical advisor to a few companies around the world. So, and I love going for conferences. So that's kind of what I do now.
Basically. Is
let's
there
let's not
any?
call it
Is
that.
there any? Is there any risk for like? Have you ever felt any risk for your
No,
safety?
no, not like what I've heard can happen in the US. Um, but I've never had to double check my brake lines or anything like that. I've managed to kind of keep a low profile, I would say, over the last 2.5 years, trying to figure out what it is that I want to do, or the message I want to amplify, or I've been a little bit cautious, because up until very recently, I thought that my medical license was the be all and end all. And I'm very glad to say that I don't think that is the case anymore. So we'll see. I'm very happy that I found my place with PNI, Psycho-Neuro-Immunology. So that's the hard science behind the soft science of mind-body medicine. You know, um, how your psychology, your behaviors, your emotions can affect your physiology. And so I'm basically here to help patients take back some power.
All right. So you just gave a good explanation of what you're into, right? It's how your psyche affects your physical health. Is
Yeah.
there anything else to add to that, or is like what's the most
Oh,
important thing when you work with somebody regarding P&L?
I think a lot of patients don't realize how much their psychology, their behaviors, their emotions, their spirituality can affect their physiology. In part, it's going to be the fact that the HPA axis, so the hypothalamic adrenal axis, and then the HPG, so the hypothalamic, pituitary and gonadal systems actually work in tandem with each other, and how intricately entwined they are. And so, yes, we are talking about neurochemistry or neurotransmitters, but then we sort of get into that quantum realm as well, where everything is quantumly entangled. Whether it's us within ourselves, us in our community, our microbiomes with other people's microbiomes, the fact that our biofield even has a microbiome, like all these things are sort of new, novel, being investigated. I don't think that in 5 years' time we're going to say, oh wow, this is all still so new, so novel. No, we've got so much information. Unfortunately, a lot of it was sort of developed by the Russians, and so in the Western world, we're not as privy to that
Our
information. Yeah, our enemies, exactly, right? So, and then things don't get translated, and if things get translated, they mysteriously disappear. I mean, I don't want to go down the whole conspiracy pathway because life is strange enough, but there's a lot to learn, and the more I go down the path of just trying to be a good doctor, whatever that means, I realized, you know what? I know shit. Like there's so much to know, and patients need to be given back their power because only you know your body best, right? So that's why we need to be listening to patients because half the time they can actually tell us what's wrong with them. It's just that we've been taking away from them, saying to them that their salvation is at the bottom of a bloody pill bottle, or that us, the medical fraternity, we have the answer to their problems. And it's like, we can help, we can be a guide, but the pharmaceutical industry has really, as someone just said, has inverted everything.
Yeah. Actually, you brought up a lot of points that I was going to ask you about. One of them was like what your relationship to not knowing everything is. Like do you have that as a doctor, and how do you manage that if everyone's coming to you thinking that you're the God, basically, like the answer to all of their problems? How do you explain to them like that's not actually the case?
I'm
And like where do you go from there?
I'm really lucky. A lot of the time patients come to me because they've been through the medical ringer, they've been lost to the medical desert for years, and I'm kind of like a last ditch attempt. So patients come to me of their own volition, and by the stage or by the time they come to me, they're ready for me. And what does ready for me mean? It means that they know that the answer isn't in a supplement, in a drug, in a modality. It's not external from them. There's something else happening that they're missing. And I'm there to say, hey, look, there is no right answer and there is no wrong answer. So if drugs are right for you to open up that healing bandwidth, then of course, right? But we are so lucky. We have so many tools at our disposal, drugs, supplements, or whatever. Let's go through what you've already done. Take that off the list. What else is available? And the part about the wellspring of health being from within, that's what's usually missing. People don't talk about it because, it's just so non-quantifiable, non-qualifiable. But I'm here to say that it is. It is quantifiable, it is qualifiable, and it bloody makes a difference. And the studies have been showing that since forever, and especially since the 1970s. We have so much data. We have so many studies. It's just been buried. It's not part of the curriculum, right? And that's the really frustrating part for me.
And so are you talking about like magic woo woo placebo effect that they have the power, or like what tangible sort of steps do people make that you find yourself most recommending?
Yeah. Well, okay. So even the placebo effect, right? The fact that doctors do consider it this, like, sweep it under the carpet, don't talk about it.
Right.
Majority of medical, like clinical trials, up to 30% of the response is going to be placebo or nocebo. And we know that. We incorporate it into the statistical modeling so that we can sort of like explain it away. But if you take that into consideration, half the drugs on the market now don't actually work if you take away the placebo or nocebo effect, well, placebo effect. And so the placebo effect is evidence that healing starts in your mind. When your body believes that it is going to get a particular response or outcome, it will manufacture the very biochemicals, the very neurotransmitters, or the quantum effects that are going to give you that outcome that you think you're going to get, you know? And so it's, everybody kind of knows it already. Everybody experiences this sort of thing in some way, shape, or form. You just have to crystallize it for people, right? You have to give them permission to believe what they've seen, to believe what they felt or heard or smelled. just a super simple experiment of opening your mouth and pretending to have a lemon squeeze into your mouth, and everyone starts producing saliva. That's a placebo effect. That's a mind body effect, right?
Right.
It just goes so much deeper and further than that.
See, yeah, that lemon experiment is like something I do that on stages a lot
Oh,
because
do you?
yeah, it's just so simple to do for people. If people aren't like aware of that, if you start explaining to somebody, you guys can try it to like your parents or your friend or your roommate. Just start explaining to somebody about the like what the action of biting into a lemon is like. Just verbalize it, and that person's whole physiology will start to act as if they were biting into a lemon, as they're imagining it. And there's so much of, I mean, that's what masturbation is as well. Like, to use like a more crude example, like the person's not actually in the room with you if you're watching porn, but like your body is like going through like an actual experience as if they were.
Yeah.
um
Well, with
and
the PNI, Psycho-Neuro-Immunology, it's that it gives us so many levers to pull when it comes to trying to affect change in one of those domains, whether it's behaviors, the psychology, emotions, the immunology, the endocrinology, the nervous system. And so when we have more levers to pull, then we have more options. So, we can affect someone's hormones just by changing their behavior, i.e., sleep. We can change their behaviors by changing their immune system. So if their immune system is less inflamed, let's just say, then they're going to sleep better. We can change their immune system by changing the nervous system, right? Breath work. We can change the nervous system by changing their emotions, and so this bidirectionality is so fascinating because it's all there. All the building blocks are there, and we just have to learn how to tap into it and see the breadth of these tools for us.
how interested in psychology are you?
Oh,
Are you?
I wish I'd done it as an undergraduate, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's every time I open another paper or another book, when I'm researching for another talk, I find out more things that I didn't know. It's beautiful. It's really, really wonderful.
So you're actually looking, like your specialty or focus is actually looking at the chemical or the physical structures within the actual brain.
As well. So I was doing a lot of brain stuff maybe a couple of years ago. I'm still the director of longevity and functional medicine at a brain center in Sydney. And there, what we do is connector mapping of the brain. So a connector map is where we actually see the electrical highways of the brain and how the different parts of the brain are connected as a network, how those networks are performing and interacting within itself and between networks. Central executive network, default mode network, the salience network, and so on. Once we get a connector map, we then see which of those networks aren't, they're overfiring or underfiring. Let's just call it that. And then to try and affect change, we look for any of these networks having an electrical highway that hits the cortical surface. If it hits the cortical surface, then we can target the parcellation or the real estate on the cortical surface to stimulate that particular electrical highway to then stimulate the network. And we use transcranial magnetic stimulation. We specifically use the Stanford protocol. So that's so I was interested in like the structures of the brain, the electrical highways of the brain, like the networks of the brain.
Oh, can I just dip in there really
Yeah,
quick?
sorry,
So
yeah.
if somebody's like ruminating too much and they're like, that's a certain network of the brain, you can actually, like you said, magnetism or electro,
Yeah,
you
the
can
transcranial
stimulate.
TMS, yeah.
Okay, you can stimulate like a different part of the brain so that they're coming up with like new thoughts and not just going over like past events that they're depressed about.
Yeah, basically, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to supercharge or leapfrog the neuroplasticity. We're trying to like increase neuroplasticity really like hardcore. And then whilst we have that window of neuroplasticity, which is about 30 minutes after a transcranial magnetic stimulation of the brain, in that time, we then use other neuroplastic adjuncts, hyperbaric oxygen, red light therapy, visualization, meditation, breath work, a whole bunch of things to try and change a person's state in their physical bodies, but in their mental state too, and rewire, essentially help that patient rewire. So so that's what yes, I am interested in the sort of the structural type stuff, the neurotransmitters, that sort of more classical physics type stuff when it comes to brain. But I've become very interested in quantum medicine, quantum physics since then. Like I'm a clinician. I am a doctor. I don't understand the science as hardcore as I would like to, but I surround myself with much smarter people than me. And I'm looking at the clinical applications of understanding the mitochondria or the cell or the person at a quantum level. And it's sometimes as super simple as use daylight, use sunlight, use full spectrum light as an anchoring device for your circadian biology. I mean, that's something I know a lot of people now understand from a circadian rhythm perspective, but how does it work? Right? What does the UVA infrared do to our bodies? What are the opsins? What are the light receptors in our eyes, in our skin? How do they transduce that information? So that's the kind of stuff that I'm trying to get into now, because I think that I'm going to have, I think I'm going to be able to affect more people's lives this way.
Good. Yeah. I mean, that's all completely relevant to the hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal gland, which you're already working with already. But speaking of light, because light's a super interesting topic, what do you have a gnosis of what light is?
Oh, wow. Okay, you mean like a observer effect type, is it a wave? Is it a particle,
Yes, and do you have any going out on a limb guesses about what it is? I mean, because what we're taught in school is that there's a burning ball of gas out there, and that it's creating this thing called light, and then that allows us to see down here. But you have just suggested that light has more impact on our body, which means that it needs to be more than just
Just just
an
something that
effect of
illuminates.
fire. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, light is information, right? From an electromagnetic frequency perspective, light is information. Yes, we get information from the sun, but and it tells us where we are in a day, in a week, in a month, in a season, in the latitude, in the longitude. But that light also gives information to the plants, and the plants store that information, and that stored information is transmuted in an animal and stored in its fats and its muscle, and that information is transmuted to us when we consume that animal. And the fact that we are at a point now where we know that our cells in the mitochondria, our cells actually produce low levels of UV light, low levels of light, right, called biophotons, which, you use PMT tubes for that, the photomultiplier tubes, and you're able to actually see the emission of light from your body. Like, it's so fascinating. What does that light say? What does it mean? How do other people pick up on our light? Right? What do opsins actually do? So non-visual photoreceptors, they're everywhere. They're all over us. They're in our skin. We have photoreceptors in parts of our body on the inside that are never going to see sunlight, never going to see the external light. And that's because it's interacting with the biophotons from within. So, light's information, whatever that means, right? I think that there are plenty of people who are subscribed to your channel who will be able to educate me on these sorts of things, and I'm here for it. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, lights, I mean, I don't know the answer, but light definitely is information, and that's like the most basic way of saying it. But it answers, it's true. It rings true. I mean, light has to be information because it's informing everything on this planet. I feel that if there is, well, let's ask you, so are you subscribed to there being Earth rotating around the sun rotating around the galaxy? Is that like gravitational model of the universe? Is that do you have any flexibility on how you think about things? Like when you talk about flat Earth versus round Earth, do you how are you relating to all of these different theories that are rampant all on the internet? Are you paying attention to them? Are they not relevant?
Not really. Look, I've started getting into a bit of space medicine as well. I'm actually here at my clinic that I'm an advisor to here in DC. We've actually got a citizen space program. So if you ever did go into space, We have a program here that's going to prepare you for space, going to help make sure that when you get back from space that you're in good health, blah, blah, blah. About the whole, all these, I'm going to say conspiracy in inverted commas, only because we know that majority of conspiracies wind up being true at some point, right? It's just whether or not they choose to declassify the information or not. But like I go back to a thing that I can be very sure about, and that is I'm a clinician. So as much as I do sort of get sucked into sort of pop sci type things, a little bit of debate here, a little bit of debate there, I actually don't have the bandwidth to be going deep into things that are not going to be able to be readily translatable to clinical stuff, because that is my passion, and that is to be with patients and to help them day to day. Now, that could literally be a prescription for a medication, which I don't do, but I understand that that can be very helpful sometimes. And that can actually usually mean holding their hand and trying to help, to meet them where they are and trying to find the healing from within, because I know that is to be true. So the whole flat earth globe type stuff, I personally don't see any reason why I wouldn't believe in the earth being a globe, but I also don't really waste any bandwidth on that because it's not relevant to my practice.
So then bringing it back down to earth, whether it's whatever it is, when you tell someone, it sounds like that you might be mentioning to people like go outside. Is that a prescription you give people?
Yes,
And how, like,
absolutely.
out of all the people you're working with, you're saying that a lot of them are already coming to you, like, kind of like knowing that you might be this agent of change that's different than the system. How many of those people that you work with, like, are going outside, or like this is a completely new concept to them? Like,
So
is it new
funny
to
enough,
people?
yeah, it is actually, because look, don't forget I'm from Australia, right? We have been demonizing the sun since I was born. So in the late 70s, the 80s, right? That's why we talk about sun protection, because the sun is so evil, right? So this thing which we evolved with for millions of years, all of a sudden it's this dangerous thing that's going to cause skin cancer and like aging, and people are talking about the aesthetics of like being exposed to the sun. Nature doesn't give a shit about your aesthetics. Nature cares about function. Don't confuse those two things, right? That's the first thing. The second is that there are so many nuances to sun exposure and then subsequent skin cancer production. And we have absolutely dumbed it down for like, skin cancer 101 makes zero sense essentially in Australia at the moment. So um, I I'm definitely very gung ho about my message about getting out into the sun, because we evolved with it. Our physiology, our options, our skin, like this is all in line with sun and circadian rhythm, and circadian biology is so important. And we are only just realizing that now, which is bonkers. So when we're talking about patients getting exposed to the sun and then like, oh, I burnt or I'm going to get skin cancer, it's like, yeah, but what's your antioxidant capacity of your skin like? What's the immune system of your skin like? That's different from the immune system of your eyeballs and your lungs and your everything else. Like every organ system has its own special source, right? So what is your zinc, your vitamin A, your vitamin D, E, K, vitamin C? How, like, what makes up your collagen fibers? How tightly wound are your collagen fibers, right? All these questions is just one thing to ask about skin health. Then it's like, how much stressors do you put your skin under? The more stressors you have, the more antioxidant capacity you need. And then it's about, do you practice something called photoprevention? In other words, if you go out into the sun early morning, you tell your skin, daylight anchoring, we know what time of day it is. Hey, you know what? It's very high UVA and infrared right now, but later on, it's going to be UVB, UVC. So let's kick in those mechanisms that we need to prepare for that time. So then by the time 10, 11, 12 o'clock comes around, your skin is like, oh, okay, we're ready for you. We understand these things. But instead, if you're in your cave all day, i.e., the office, and then you duck out for your burrito run at noon, yeah, you're going to get red. And you can't blame the fact that your great, 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 great grandmother was Irish, right? It's because you haven't practiced any photo prevention. You scared your skin into thinking, oh my God, what the hell is this? I want to, I want to protect you. So I'm going to protect you by making you feel uncomfortable, by giving you a burn to try and get you back into the cave because I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Right.
So there's a lot, there's a lot more to the story than what we're told, and that really annoys me because people do whole PhDs. They dedicate whole lives to understanding, you know, skin science, UV science, and then we put it down to, in Australia, slip, slop, slap. Like, slap on a hat and slip on some sunscreen and, seek shade and, be afraid of the sun. It's like,
It's it's so laughably just like surface level, like reductionist, like sun is bad. Do
right.
not be in sun. Block sun. Sun gives you skin cancer. It's like
I know. And
we're like,
doctors believe it. That's the worst thing.
yeah,
Because we wind up perpetuating these mistruths. I got called a quack once on Instagram by some skin cancer doctor. And like I reached out to him, I said, hey, let's have a chat. Let's go meet at a cafe and talk about the science. You know, and to be fair to him, he was actually really polite and never said anything bad about me on Instagram again. But, we believe it, unfortunately.
like everything that you just mentioned is like I mean we call it like it's like a rabbit hole that is true, but you can go down and spend at least a few hours researching on your own. Anybody don't have to be a doctor to do this, and discover that it's not so simple as like sun equals skin cancer, because everything you just mentioned is completely true, and just the practice of it. Like we've had fires in California, so we haven't gone outside because the air has been completely polluted. And then there's been this like weird fog, which I also think is artificial, every single day since then. But this morning there was like 20 minutes of like blue skies, and my wife and I went and ate breakfast out there. And after we were done eating, we like 5 or 10 minutes went by where we didn't even say a word. Like there was no phones. We were just, it was like time to slip by because we were just like in the sun. Um, and then it gets to the point where the body's like, okay, like this is enough. And then
Yeah.
we got like, I literally was like, okay, let's, like she got it too. Like the body tells you when to get out of the sun.
Yep. Yep.
Like we have our own
Absolutely.
intelligence for that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about my story, but I also like, I used to compete in sports, and there was a time where I got really injured and I quit working out in the gym, and all I would do is go outside all day long. And then I started winning competitions when I wasn't working out. And so then I had to go research and figure out how it was that I was able to produce power without training, because that's, as a gym owner, what I knew to make people stronger is you have to, it's time under tension, you have to break down the muscle, and then it's going to repair and adapt, and you're going to be stronger. But that wasn't my case. I was just outdoors all day long relaxing, and then I would show up to a competition and beat every single person there, and it wouldn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff about outdoors that, like you just mentioned, there's like a whole bunch of stuff that is it's not so basic to understand. And we're still exploring it. Like as a human species, we still don't understand everything. That's the most exciting part about this,
Yes.
is that light isn't just for seeing. The earth isn't just there for us to walk on. Like the air is something else. It interacts with us like much differently. And then the biophotons, there's all of this interesting things that we all get to explore.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a biohack, in inverted commas, a biohacker as well. And I used to be playing around with different types of supplements and different types of modalities, and going to the biohacker conferences and seeing what's what and buying all the toys. And look, it's fun, especially if you can afford it, of course. But I've got to a point now for a few, gosh, how long now? Maybe a year or so, where I pretty much don't do anything because I'm playing around to see how much my mind can actually move things and change things, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's a discovery every day about how much it can actually do and how impressive it is. And then also learning the my boundaries and my parameters as well. And so I actually have original frameworks. So one of my original frameworks that I actually do lectures on. I'm going to Copenhagen today to give this lecture tomorrow. Then I am in Dubai in a week's time. I'm giving a similar lecture. I'm doing more sort of brain health type stuff, and then I'm doing an Australia, New Zealand speaking tour about this. But the framework is the 8 ancient survival threats and how your survival brain perceives modern threats. Because if your nervous system is such that your ancient brain or your survival brain is kind of making a more of an appearance and coming to the helm of the boat and like, taking over from the prefrontal cortex because you've been bombarded with threats, whether it's, like objective threats like being hit or abuse of some description, your body's always going to try and protect you. So then the survival brain kind of takes over a little bit more. You can possibly have some primitive reflexes come back, like the startle response. You see that, like that's meant to have disappeared, but all of a sudden, when you've had shit happen in your life, you get a little bit more jumpy, become more hypervigilant, that kind of stuff. And so when the survival brain is in charge, it still sees things through an evolutionary lens. So it's still going to see, like, if you do fasting 16/8 and you've had, a tough run this year, whatever it is, COVID, blah, blah, blah. And then you're a woman and you think, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the things that all these biohackers are talking about, and I'm going to do intermittent fasting. And I'm going to do 16/8 because that's really worked out for some influencer online. And then you lose your period. You're like, oh my God, it's because I'm 40 and therefore I'm perimenopausal. All right. Can't get my period back. All right. Then they finally like see someone like me or some of these other great practitioners who do women's health on a regular basis. And the word on the street is that it's because you're not meant to fast like that. You're also meant to be listening to your body. And if your nervous system doesn't understand what you're doing, it is going to try and protect you. And instead of fasting or what you think is fasting, your survival brain thinks it's a famine. And famines are not good times to have babies, and it's going to shut down your reproductive capability. Wow, your body's trying to protect you, right? So what you can do, you can do several things. One, you can increase your calories. Two, you can actually increase carbs, around your period, for example. And this is not for everyone. This is like, I'm just broad stroking here. Or you can actually work on your nervous system so that your nervous system will accept the intermittent fasting that you want to put it through. So there are lots of levers to pull, and there's no one way for everybody, and that's the whole point of personalized medicine.
Okay, thank you for that. And I hope everyone got that. There's two things I'd like to bring up before we go. One, and they're both things that you mentioned. One is you just talked about. It sounded like you were alluding to the topic of manifestation. So I'd like some on that and your relationship with that. And then also you mentioned, like the very first sentence you said, something about our microbiome of our aura. I don't think you used the word aura,
yeah.
but
biofields, I said.
Okay, there we go. The scientific name of the aura, the human biofield. So manifestation, because I think my entire brand is mostly about that, because eventually you get to that when you're like discovering all of this, and you're like, but wait, if placebo effect's working and this is working, can I do this? And then you just experiment, and then you realize like, wow, there's no limits, there's no boundaries to this. So what's your relationship to that word? I don't even know if that's the word that you would use.
Manifestation?
Yeah.
Love it. I think that, like everybody else, I'm on a journey too. I started off my background is that when I was younger, I grew up Catholic. So I had a very strong relationship to an institution of religion. And, I'm no longer Catholic. And I actually became an atheist for a few years after my mom died, and then became agnostic, and then became what I call spiritual. And now I I'm just overwhelmed and in awe of the many capabilities and surprises that the universe has. And for me to think that I even know anything about anything is laughable. So I'm here for I'm here for the surprises. I'm here with a beginner's mindset, right? I'm proper Shoshin about this because I meet wonderful people on my journey all the time who constantly teaching me stuff, whether it's about manifestation, whether it's about multiverses, the double slit experiment, as this guy is talking about in the comments. Like, the observer effect absolutely means that we something is or isn't, and something becomes when we see it. Hence the multiverse, right? So every eventuality has already happened, but we choose which timeline we go into just by our thoughts and our actions, and we constantly jump, right? And that's pretty much as far as I go ish. Now I realize that with a manifestation thing, like if I'm vibrating at a particular, you know, like I love Hawkins' work, David Hawkins' work, the different levels of consciousness and stuff like that. Like I just make sure that I vibe in a way that I want to attract those vibrations. And like I recently met someone who is exactly the kind of person that I want to be with. And he's vibing so high. Not only have I must have been so fortunate to have been vibing at that level at that time when I met him, but I know that he is the person for me to help bring me up as well, because he's got so much to teach me. And you know what? He's not a doctor. He's not a scientist, right? Because all those things are arbitrary. And in fact, I feel anyway that medicine and science conventionally taught actually puts us in a bit of a bubble and makes us A, think that we're too good for school, right? B, it like locks us into this way of thinking, and that is the absolute problem. Doctors, scientists, all God knows what. Like I go to that many conferences now, and I realize the biggest problem with medicine is how we think, i.e., we don't. We get given the information from higher sources, right? It goes from the government to the working body to the doctors, and then we get given the piece of paper. This is the algorithm that you go down. Who gives a shit what the patient has to say? Who gives a shit who's in front of you, right? This is what you do. If they have this symptom, you give them this drug. Absolute nonsense. So how we think has to be brought back into the fold. And we need to start exploring all these different options, including things like manifestation, because we have the science to show why it works. Like, with the tuning forks and the vibrations, it's exactly that. Every cell, um, uh, everything in life carries a vibration, right? Everything has a particular vibration, which we know of, which we can see in experimentation. And in fact, in 2019, I went to a brain tumor summit at a conventional hospital in New York. And the company was called Emulate Therapeutics, and they were talking about the fact that drugs don't cross the blood-brain barrier, and that's why brain tumors are really hard to treat, and so on and so forth. Sorry, I'm going down a bit of a tangent. I want to tell the story. Yeah. And this company was saying about how, what they've done is that because everything carries a particular electromagnetic frequency, they're actually going to extract the electromagnetic frequency from the drug you want to use and encode it into an electrical device, which is worn as a coronet on the head of a patient for 23 hours a day. And it's going to push out that electromagnetic frequency of that particular drug, right? So it will bypass the skull, it bypasses the bone, and you get the benefits without the side effect, because there are no interactions and like different molecules breaking off after the big molecule is broken down and blah, blah, blah. And I remember in 2019 thinking, what the fuck are they talking about? And I was looking around, and there are all these like professors around me sort of writing. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to write that too. But I've been following them with interest over the last few years. And they actually finished pilot studies in Australia, the University of Melbourne, I think it was, a couple of years ago. I think the pandemic has actually slowed them down a little bit. But I happened to be at a biohacker conference, and I saw this device called a HAPBEE, HAPBEE. And I found out that the parent company for them was Emulate Therapeutics. So I was like, oh, by the way, I have nothing to do with this company. So I went up to the guy and I said, this product that you have is a wellness product. Can I ask, are you guys using the same tech as your parent company? And he said, yes. And I said, are you guys Trojan horsing? Are you using this as a wellness device because you don't have FDA approval, but it's the same tech as the big guy and blah, blah, blah? And he's like, yes. And I was like, this is so interesting, we know at the highest levels, right? Science, university, electromagnetic frequencies are important, and they affect change. Hence why if you blase up spitting out 6G, 5G, 4G, Wi-Fi, all these non-native EMFs, and you're like, oh, it's no problem. It doesn't matter that the International Association of Cancer Research is saying that it's a possible carcinogen. let's push it out into society first, and then ask questions later. Like, it's mind-boggling. So I feel like my mission on Earth in this life is actually to try and do the hard science, to talk about it from a scientific perspective, and to sort of advance this side of things, because there is evidence. It's just been, up until now, it's being sullied by unsavory actors who are trying to suppress this kind of information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we need translators, like from your perspective, to especially when it comes to the mass adoption of it, which will then fund products and or just revolutionary change in the whole earth if the masses start to realize this. But they kind of do. We're all convinced in school that science is king, and so
Well, what kind of
yeah.
science, right? Science is never settled. That's for sure. The methodology should be debate, and so yeah. I mean, I love science. I'm a scientist, right? But
Mm-hmm.
not the science that's being practiced now. This whole follow the science, trust us, bullshit. There's only one way to do things. Yeah, no, that's not science. That's dogma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's even experiments where you shine light through pictures of things. Like, I forget, I tried looking it up, but I couldn't find it. Like a sick raspberry bush, and then you put a healthy raspberry picture in front of it, shine light through it, and it actually fixes the raspberry bush. Or you take salamander eggs and frog eggs, and you shine light from one to the other, and it'll change the actual species of the eggs. I forget if it was frog to salamander or salamander to
I
frog, but there's
I
crazy.
didn't know that. That's so cool. I'd love to look that experiment up. But that, whatever it is, that those sorts of experiments with light, that's called optogenetics,
Okay.
the use of light to change physiological properties of cells.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So biofield. Um, how can there be a biome to our biofield?
Well, everything is electromagnetic frequencies. Certain things are attracted to certain things, right? We actually know that bacteria actually communicates via something called quorum sensing, QUORUM. In other words, you can have a petri dish and you can have two lots of bacteria on two sides of the petri dish and they're not even connected. And you give antibiotics to one side of the petri dish, and instantaneously the bacteria on the other side of the petri dish is going to start changing and transcribing different proteins to try and protect themselves from the antibiotics on one side. So we see that in petri dishes, we see that in people. There's something called the abscopal effect, so ABSCOPAL, where you have a person with multiple tumors everywhere, and you do radiation therapy in one tumor in one part of the body, and other tumors in other parts of the body are going to start reacting, right? Because there's a microbiome everywhere, and the microbiome speaks to each other via this quorum sensing. And part of quorum sensing, I think, is actually they're entangled over large distances. And so, that's why a lot of these experiments where you can't see something, but they give you the like a color pad or something, and you know what color it is, or you're able to guess what a number is, or that the kind of stuff that Heart Math Institute does, and they're not the only ones. There are lots of different universities that do these kinds of experiments, and it's always better than chance, is because this quantum entanglement and being able to see without your eyes is a very real phenomena. It's just that up until now, we haven't had the assays to be able to test it appropriately, but we do now. There is a company called Anibiome, ANIBIOME. It's a Psycho-Neuro-Immunology company, and they're taking in all this data from people. Just your pee and your poo and your blood and PPG information, wearable information, rah 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 rah. And the idea is to have so much data to then use AI and machine learning to start sifting through things to see how do certain electromagnetic states, i.e. emotions or psychology, how does that change your physiology? Because the minute we start getting hard data, then there's no denying it, and then you're going to be able to get funding for more studies and so on and so forth.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, so I think we'll end it there. And I just want to share some of your your website or your Instagram is Dr. Olivia Lesslar. And then same thing with the website, it's just that.com.
Yeah.
I'll definitely tag the information in the caption about this. Is there anything else you'd like to plug? I mean, you mentioned that you were going around, but is there any other programs that you have that you'd like to plug right now?
Not really, to be honest. Yeah, I've been like, I think, I think I have been told now that I really need to start looking more at the business side to health and medicine. But for now, I'm happy just doing what I'm doing, and I am going to be doing what I think is like a reflexive contemplation period of intense study and writing, mostly, to be honest with you, mostly with information that I've been downloading from Source since January last year. And I'm doing that the whole of April, May, and June. So I'm doing sort of 2.5, 3 months where I'm going to hole myself up in a room somewhere and just make sure that I'm well hydrated, doing a little bit of a detox, surrounding myself without any Wi-Fi and stuff, and just start plugging, just chugging through all these different ideas that I've been downloading. So reimagining different topics in healthcare, in medicine, in wellness, because unfortunately right now, the reason why we have the answers that we do have to anything, right? Disease processes to medications to supplements to whatever it is, we have the answers we have because of the questions we've asked. And the questions we've asked were based off the answers that we asked from previous studies. And if you ask the wrong questions, you're going to get the wrong answers. And so sometimes it helps to take a step back and to go right back to the beginning and reimagine a disease process, like let's just say endometriosis or something like that, and then re-ask some different questions because you're going to get different answers and patients deserve that.
Well, I'm trusting that you're going to be a worthy channel for some surprising information that's going to come through Source.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see what's revealed to you in that experimentation. Okay, everybody, thank you so much, Dr. Olivia, for being here with us, and
No worries.
on your travels.
Yeah.
Have some fun.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and for everyone who's tuned in as well, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, all right. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.